For individuals with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, they can be far more intense and far more frequent. PTSD related nightmares aren't just occasional disturbing dreams. They often play traumatic events. They disrupt our sleep and they intensify emotional turmoil.
Okay, let's go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening or watching Coaching to Change podcast with me. I am your podcasting host, Dr. Aaron P. Bryant. People ask me over and over why I do this. And, it's not just the podcasting. Giving therapy and coaching sessions all over the world has been something that has truly given me perspective and so much enlightenment on all the people that I've been involved with, people I've gotten to know, and I couldn't be more thrilled to continue to do this. And, specifically relating to the topic tonight that we're going to discuss, I understand this probably more than most topics because it's a personal investment in what I say and in my pursuit to learn and understand how we deal with life. Our topic tonight is about nightmares and PTSD. Now, I know I've had topics about this before. I've discussed PTSD and understanding what it relates to. But tonight we're going to talk about it from a different perspective, where it's related to nightmares, but understanding their connection and also managing the impact. When you talk about nightmares, it's distressing for anyone. We hear about this from the moment we are little kids growing up, and it's something that we either have dreams or we have nightmares, and our parents come in and provide us some level of protection. But for individuals with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, they can be far more intense and far more frequent. PTSD related nightmares aren't just occasional disturbing dreams. They often play traumatic events. They disrupt our sleep and they intensify emotional turmoil. Many military combatants or combat people that have been involved in the military, traumatic veterans, first responders, we all have to deal with this. Victims of violent crimes, they're challenged with this. I have a client right now. We just had a session about her ex-boyfriend, and he has made it a habit to stalk her when she leaves work. Now, she has a fear that one day he will escalate, and that's something we've actually discussed. So she wakes up in a panic and feeling that he actually might be there in her apartment. And, she's afraid that somehow he's going to get a key and this is what's going to happen. And she's afraid of what he's going to do. So this is literally something she's going through, which is a PTSD related trauma, because he's already violently had an issue with her and now is getting to the point where she cannot seem to function. So this is some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to discuss this and we're going to explore why PTSD leads to these specific nightmares. We're going to discuss the toll they take on mental and physical well-being. And we're also going to talk about effective strategies for reducing the level of impact, because that's just as important. So now keep in mind, I said effective, and I didn't say solutions, and I definitely didn't say resolutions. That would require you giving me a call and we schedule a session. So on that note, if you do enjoy the topics that we cover and want to be reminded of each episode every week, please subscribe. And I think you have to click that bell that's on the YouTube, or there's a little bell there, and that's so you get reminded of the next show. And again, we have shows every single week with different topics related to mental health. My expertise in this field and your personal wellness and development, this is what it's all about. So if this is something you want to learn more, and you can find me right here. And if you need assistance in this area or know someone that does, please reach out to me on my website. It's really simple, draaronpbryant.com, and schedule a session with me. Enough of that. So you're hopefully you did that, you're subscribed, you're following the page. All right, so let's discuss the link between PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and nightmares. The way the brain interprets painful memories is closely linked to PTSD-related dreams. Okay, let me say that again. The brain interprets painful memories, because there is a link to it, to the dreams that we're having that are obviously trauma-related. The PTSD, something that's happened. The brain integrates and it stores our experiences as we sleep, especially during our rapid eye movement. You probably have taken some classes in school, the REM, rapid eye movement. Okay, so that's a time period of when you're sleeping. Okay, so that is how the PTSD is affecting you. It stores those experiences during that period of time where you think you're supposed to be relaxing. However, these memories are still emotionally charged to those trauma survivors. It makes it difficult for the brain. It makes it difficult for us for it to classify them as quote unquote past occurrences. Okay, you're following me now. This is meaning that it's taking that something that should have been historic, something that should have been already gone, already had it. Unfortunately, it's impacting you right now in the present. So rather they reappear in your dreams as intense, upsetting situations, frequently with a level of intensity that is similar to the initial trauma. So although it's happening in your dream, it's actually making you feel like you're going through it again. So this process, there's this is psychology. So there's all kinds of names and terms, and this process can be explained by fear conditioning. It's a psychological phenomenon where, like, you have certain, when we're sleeping, we're supposed to reach that relaxed state. The brain continues to process the memories, though. That PTSD, it's in an alarmed, defensive state, and it's often, here's the thing, it's often related to distressing dreams that will wake the individual. That's how intense this can be. And the more intense the scenario, the more alarming the nature of the nightmare. I pause there because I really want you to process that, because some of you might be thinking about that, relating to it, and understanding that. A case in point, if I was sleeping next to somebody and I'm having a particular memory, I could find myself choking the person next to me without realizing what I'm doing. Remember, I told you I walked into a room. It's a dark room. There was somebody that challenged me, and that situation escalated to where we're now in this situation where it's either going to be him or me. Now, if I'm reliving that while I'm supposed to be sleeping and there is somebody next to me, if my wife is sleeping there, or if you have a girlfriend, or whatever scenario you could be in, you could act that out without even knowing. And this is actually based on a true story, not mine, but based on a true story. I actually I'm aware of a situation where that actually took place. And it was a veteran that actually did this. And unfortunately, there were things that took place where this particular person ended up being charged with assault. Now, the thing is, I have this on another podcast where we go into things that could actually help and support veterans that find themselves in these scenarios unwillingly. This is not something they had, there's no premeditation. This is based on, experiencing PTSD. And so I have a podcast called Veterans Court. And if you go to that particular podcast, you can learn more about that and how those type of things are there to support veterans. Because in this particular situation, that particular person had no control or was aware of what he was doing. So that's a whole nother story. So let's discuss the emotional and physical impact of PTSD as it relates to nightmares. So it's nightmares extend even beyond the night. Okay, so that leaving, lingering effects on your daily life. So it's not just going to impact you at night while you're in bed. It's actually going to impact your daily life during the day, both mentally and physically. Okay, so we're going to go into some of the impacts, and I have quite a few of them, which, one of the more popular ones, is, sleep disruption and insomnia. That's probably my own personal issue, because the PTSD nightmares lead to repeated awakenings, often causing insomnia. So you're not sleeping, so you're awake, and this is giving you insomnia, your lack of restful sleep, which is going to affect your mood. It's going to affect your focus. Your physical energy levels are not going to be there. You're going to have daytime fatigue. The constant interruption of sleep, that could contribute to a cycle of just lack of rest, which makes the mind more susceptible to stress. Increasing the likelihood of more nightmares. It's clearly a never-ending cycle, and it's going to be something that's going to be hard to get off of. If I put on my medical hat, I can, go into discussing how this will impact your health with, possibilities of stroke. It's going to weaken your immune system, your cardiovascular. You're going to have issues there, weight gain, obesity. I mean, when you don't sleep, if you're not able to sleep, this is where some of these things are going to truly impact you. So clearly, this is alarming for those experiencing such a thing, like myself. Most psychiatrists, they're going to prescribe something to help you sleep. However, I will warn you, before considering this, or if you could either talk to your therapist, try to figure out something else. Come up with some other options before you just run to the medication. And I'll talk more about why I say that. Let's talk another option. Another thing that this is going to impact is, increased anxiety, and there's something called sleep dread. Again, I'm familiar with all this. For individuals with PTSD, the fear of having another nightmare can lead to that particular term, which is sleep dread. This is just basically anxiety that builds up around the idea of going to sleep, and again, I mentioned that this is my own personal issue, so I'm fully aware of this. The fear of causing many to delay going to bed and avoiding sleep altogether, because you just don't want to have to go through the memory of what is reoccurring in your head. And some of us don't have just one. Some of us have variations of trauma that they've been through, variations of memories, variations of nightmares. I definitely don't judge, and I definitely don't compare, but there's sometimes a traumatic impact could be the same situation and you're reoccurring that same situation. But can you imagine when there's something that you've had multiple circumstances on? Sometimes I think about my fellow veterans and the ones who've done 3 to 4 tours, and they experience and they build up on all of these different nightmares. Can you imagine the weight? Can you imagine the toll that they're undergoing? And you want to avoid any type such conversations. So I get it. I truly get it. I understand, because I've been there. And because of that, you start to have other implications, such as your physical health. So it's hard to, people don't realize you got this. How does nightmares going to impact you physically? But when you relive this trauma, you develop this fight or flight reaction. And this emotional roller coaster can result in physical symptoms. And that is your beating of your heart, your perspiration, your muscle tightness. Remember that story I told you about waking up and choking another person? That is the definition of fight reaction. These repeated responses can increase the risk of long-term health concerns like high blood pressure, heart disease, weakened immune system, and that can be caused by chronic stress. Please understand, these are categories for you to familiarize yourself in case you wonder why you're struggling to sleep, or somebody, a loved one, is struggling to sleep, or if you are married to this person and you're wondering why they're struggling, because they're giving off very similar symptoms. Let's discuss that. Let's discuss how can we help that person. Let's discuss effective strategies and how we're going to figure out how to manage those PTSD related nightmares, because we're still focusing and talking about nightmares. I mean, that's not going away if we are reliving these things in our head, because these things can be very overwhelming. There are several evidence-based approaches to managing this, and I'm going to put on my therapy hat, and I'm going to get a little psychological. I know this is about coaching, and yes, I definitely provide a coaching component when I'm providing therapy, because I'm encouraging you to improve. I'm encouraging you to become a better person. Your wellness is a hybrid for me to blend the two together. At this point, when you're talking about a trauma survivor, I have to apply some of the therapeutic tools that are taught to me. One of those is what we call CBT, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy. And it is popularly used for PTSD. Most therapists use this technique in their practices. Although I'm trained, although I learned it in school, I understand it, but I mostly focus on a person-centric or a client-centered therapy. I've talked about it before, but that's because due to the personal accountability that I believe in, and the development nature of the person's expertise, or that's my expertise, and the emphasis of what I am trying to work with that particular client in understanding. But CBT, the cognitive part of it, that's another alternative, and it helps individuals recognize and challenge negative thought patterns. That's what's associated with their particular trauma, and this is done by identifying thoughts that reinforce the fear. Okay, I'm going to say that again. So again, we're talking about CBT, and that's recognizing and challenging negative thoughts, okay? Thought patterns that are associated with the trauma. And that's identifying those thoughts, okay, that reinforce the fear. So CBT can reduce the frequency and intensity of PTSD symptoms, and that's obviously including the nightmares. So therapists often guide clients in revisiting and reinterpreting the traumatic memories, obviously in a safe and structured environment with a professional therapist, but helping the brain categorize these memories as a non-threatening over time. So obviously, this is going to take time. It's a repeated effort for the therapist to guide and assist the client through moments through the moments and all through the fears. So this is not something that can be done overnight. However, there are other tools that can be applied. Another one is called image rehearsal therapy, IRT. Now, image rehearsal therapy is a little different. However, it's a technique specifically designed to combat nightmares. So when you're in a IRT session, and I'll say that again, image rehearsal therapy, when you're in those sessions, individuals, they're encouraged to recall a recurring nightmare, but then change the ending to be less distressing. I'll share with you that I find this effective, and because it requires imagination. Okay, so it definitely requires imagination, and I think it also requires some strong will. In fact, before I even got into psychology and coaching, I actually did this for myself without knowing the terminology of what it was called. I had no idea it was called IRT. I just tried to psych myself into believing something different. You probably heard somebody say, change your ending. I don't know if it came from that, but it makes sense. By visualizing this altered, less frightening version repeatedly, the brain can start to replace the original nightmare with this new revised memory. Okay, so studies have shown that IRT can significantly reduce both the frequency and emotional impact of PTSD related memories or nightmares. That I find, like I said, I make sure you don't feel like you're losing yourself to where you're not even functioning. You don't want to find yourself in some zombie state. So these things are definitely necessary to take in perspective. However, we have other options. One of the more popular ones that's going on right now is, relaxation techniques. This mindfulness thing is really popular. Do this before you go to bed. It can definitely help lower stress levels and it can relax the mind. Techniques like meditation, deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. They've all done positive effects on PTSD symptoms. They can create a sense of calmness that may help, and I say may help reduce nightmares. So, try that. Guided mindfulness exercises, they teach the mind to approach distressing thoughts or memories with a more balanced perspective, and that can lessen their impact on your dreams. So if you need assistance in learning more about this, find somebody who knows meditation, yoga, find a holistic expert, and that person will give you some guidance on this. And fortunately, I cannot help you because the closest I've come to doing anything like this is when I was studying martial arts and I did Tai Chi. I tried to do this, recently, again, my own personal, and I just can't go there. I can't do it. It just won't slow down for that. However, I do know about this next strategy, and that's and I know it so well because I struggle with it, and that's your lifestyle adjustment to improve basically to improve your sleep quality. So you got to change your lifestyle so you can be able to sleep. And that's a difficult thing to do, changing what you're accustomed to doing all the time. So, I've already, one of the first techniques that they provide, I've already failed at it, and that's avoiding caffeine and alcohol. They both can disrupt the REM sleep, where most dreams occur. I talked about that. But avoiding these substances, especially in the evening, they can reduce the vividness and frequency of nightmares. Okay, I got it. I told you the rule, okay? Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying stop altogether. This is based on reduction or moderation. Sure, you can have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. It has caffeine in it, of course. Now, if you're like this one guy I used to work with in the state government, he would drink a venti coffee almost every few hours. And, so if you're like that, you're definitely going to have to tone it down. Also, limit your alcohol consumption. That would be good. By default, we typically drink at night, unless you're one of those that says it's 12 o'clock somewhere. So if you choose to drink, hopefully it's outside of 4 hours of going to bed. And obviously not to the point of drunkenness. Now, I know, I get it. It's hard because at nighttime, that's where they came up with the term nightcap, right? And even myself, I typically will make myself something to drink. And well, I don't go to bed till 3 a.m., so I guess I stay outside the 4 hours. But, we don't always do that. So if you can avoid having consumption and too much consumption, you might be able to reduce some of the likelihood. A calming bedtime routine. Now, a routine that includes some sort of soothing activity, such as reading, journaling, listening to soft music. That can prepare the mind and it can prepare the body for a restful sleep. Limit your screen time. They got that blue light, it does something to the eyes, and that can interfere with sleep, disrupting the sleep wake cycle, increasing your dream intensity. So turn off the TV, turn off the cell phones, find something to create calmlessness. I personally, I listen to audiobook. I love my audiobook, and I set a timer on the audiobook app, like 15, 20 minutes, depending on how tired I am. Sometimes I'll continue to listen. There's times where the book is so good, I don't fall asleep, and that's not always a good thing. But set the timer, and typically I'll fall asleep, and the book is stopped maybe 10 or 15 minutes later because of my timer, and I pick up where I left off. Not a big deal. But, these are some of the things that will bring me down. Reducing that screen exposure, as I mentioned, an hour before bed. That can help signal the brain it's time to wind down. So these are all techniques, all right? The next one is very important in my opinion. That is support networks. I cannot express how important this is. Support groups definitely provide a safe space for trauma survivors. And that's, to share your experiences, and it provides coping strategies. Now, that's if you're there, if you're ready for that. I will tell you, there was a time where I was not ready for that. In fact, I'm still not ready for it outside of my own network, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But talking with others who understand can help reduce feelings of isolation, and they can provide tips of managing your nightmares, because they've been there, they've done that. Some will have more experience than others, so you may benefit from using mental health apps if you're not there yet to talk to somebody. There are mental health apps that are designed for PTSD and offers relaxation exercises, symptom tracking, and there are definitely techniques that you can learn from that and practice it at home. There was a time I met a fellow ranger, and it was a random situation, and let me tell you, that does not happen too often in this gigantic world, to meet somebody who had this very similar experience.